I mean, I was just looking at this list of like people that you work with. So it's Radiohead, Suede, Suede.Echobelly, Boo Radleys, Sleeper, Pulp, Cocteau Twins, Teenage Fanclub, Sneaker Pimps, Finley Quaye, the Dear Davenport, Bryan Ferry, Lisa Stansfield, Bjork, Lighthouse Family, Gay Dad, Morcheeba, Elastica, Stereo MCs, Dandy Warhols, Katrina in the Raves, Jeaned, The Damned, Mika.
Bless his little cotton socks.
What was that like?
So yeah, I mean, I did a year with him.
Yeah.
And I quite enjoyed doing it, but in retrospect,
How about
6 months would have been better.
Okay, so welcome to Mixing Sheffield's Walls of Ears.
Thank you, looks nice.
Oh, thank you. Jon Burton.
Yes.
It's a real privilege to have you here today, Jon.
Thank you very much.
For those that don't know, you're currently front of house engineer for the Prodigy and Bombay Bicycle Club.
Yep, at the moment.
At the moment, your career is an illustrious career to say the least, up to this point.
Sound like it's going to end tomorrow.
No, I didn't mean that.
It's been a long and industrious career, which will hopefully continue for a few more years. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's just go right back to the start then. Where did things start for you within the music industry? How did you, and what motivated you to get into music?
I think I was like many young people. Decided I wanted to be a sound engineer at quite an early age. I was kind of about 15 or 16. Mm-hmm. I'd actually went to a radio session and heard something being recorded and thought it was really good. And then I actually went to Abbey Road Studios when I was really quite young. Yeah. And just thought it was brilliant. I just thought the whole idea, the place, the idea of actually recording music and stuff. So I'd actually, I remember being asked by the, when you used to go to the careers advice, and they're going, so what do you want to do when you leave school? Yeah. And for most of the kids at my school, it was British Leyland was the nearest big employer, and it's like, fancy going to British Leyland? It's like, well, actually, I want to go and be a sound engineer. I said, well, I don't know how you can do that. And I said, well, I'm going to apply to the BBC. So I actually applied to the BBC when I was, I think, 17, and got an interview. So I trundled down to Bush House in London, which is, I don't know if you've ever been to Bush House. It's absolutely amazing old building on the Aldwych. It's on the Strand, sorry. Yeah. And it's got big pillars outside. And I used to have the BBC commissionaire guy with the proper uniform and the gold braid. And I kind of walked in, saw the big marble foyer, walked back outside, went down to British Home Stores, bought a better tie, came back in and went for an interview as, I think it was basically as a sound engineer. Because in those days, they used to actually have a college where they train you to become a sound engineer or to work for the BBC. And they had a technical college, which I think was out sort of Chalfont St Giles, Buckinghamshire way. Yeah. Unfortunately, I got through the first interview, but I didn't do physics or anything like that at school. Right. I was very much arts, I did art A-level, English A-level and history. All three absolutely useless for getting a job at the BBC. And then played in bands until, I kept playing in bands till I was about 30. But I was always kind of involved in the technical side. I was always interested in taking the things to bits. And I did tours when I was really early, where I was actually the sound engineer plus the guitarist in the support band, which got a bit mental on a couple of occasions. But I was always kind of, I love that side of things. I love the technical side of things. And I was always very interested in making sounds. As a guitarist, I was always interested in the sound I was making more than in learning to play properly, I suppose. I was never a great musician, but I made a good sound.
Do you feel that that's, over the years, really helped you in that role? Because you are, you're a musician, you've got a musicality to you as well.
I think it's very difficult to be a sound engineer without being a musician. I'm always kind of a bit, I don't really trust sound engineers who aren't interested in music.
Yeah.
I think you've got to have a love of music first, then an interest in the technology second, really.
Yes.
I think if you haven't got the interest in the actual, if music doesn't inspire you,
Yeah.
then it would be a bit of a thankless task being a sound engineer. And just very difficult. I think you've got to have a musical ear. I think it definitely is an aptitude that you have. Things worry me, you know, I get worried about sound and I listen to things all the time. And other people aren't affected in the same way that I am.
Yes.
I can't stand it when I'm walking in a supermarket and one of the speakers is out of phase. It just freaks me out completely.
Oh my God.
Whereas my wife is just completely oblivious to it. And when I come home from tour, she'll have been hoovering and she'll have unplugged one of the hi-fi speakers to move down, and it doesn't worry her in the slightest that it's only coming out of one speaker. Whereas I'm like, what's wrong? There's something wrong with that. And straight away I'm like, you know, what's wrong with my hi-fi? And it's an obsessional thing.
Yeah.
And it gets worse as well the more time you spend listening to things for a living, really, to a certain extent. It is an obsessional thing.
Yeah. But I suppose you're at the top of your game. And so to get
I'm near the top. I don't think I'm at the top, but
really?
I'm working hard to get there. But no, I've been doing this a long time, and I've worked hard to get where I am.
Yes. You've from the bit of background that I understand, you very much have worked your way right up, haven't you?
Yes. I started off carrying gear up and down stairs, to helping to plug it in, to stand there watching someone else mix, to actually mixing my own mixing shows.
Yeah.
And worked. So I did what they used to call an apprenticeship, really.
Yeah.
I mean, not a formal apprenticeship, but I worked for a couple of companies. I worked for a company called Tiger Hire in Oxford, and another company called Scan in Reading.
Yeah.
And they were kind of the two. Pete from Scan and Jim from Tiger were kind of the two major figures in my early career. They taught me pretty much everything I knew for many years. It wasn't until I actually started thinking about teaching myself that I realised how much I didn't know and had to actually then start reading books.
Yes.
But I learnt enough from them to go out and do gigs, you know, and they very much gave me an apprenticeship of like teaching me what they were doing, showing me what to do, making me self-sufficient, and then sending me out to do my own shows.
And at that sort of time, what sort of shows were you doing?
I was doing all sorts of things. The good thing about Tiger Hire is we used to do a very diverse selection of things. At the time I was living in Oxford, and we used to do a thing called Fun in the Parks, which was brilliant. And it's the sort of thing that Sheffield should do. Every city should do it. Any city that's got parks, is they put a little stage in a park and put 2 or 3 bands on it. On a Sunday afternoon, kids go, watch bands. And I remember seeing bands doing their first biggish gig in front of 200 or 300 people. Bands like Supergrass, bands like Ride.
Really?
Ride turning up in a 2CV with all the band and the kit, all in a 2CV. It took them 2 trips though, because they were a 4-piece band and they did have a drum kit.
Yeah.
Turning up late because they had to do 2 trips, and then throwing the gear on stage. And that's the first time I saw Ride, was at Tina Park on a little stage, probably in front of 200 or 300 local kids on a Sunday afternoon. But I also got to do people like Ray Mann's Chinese Orchestra. Ray Mann is really famous for having one of the first, he had a Chinese instrument shop in London. And was very involved in Chinese cultural music. And he had a Chinese orchestra playing traditional Chinese instruments. And you got to mic up. For anyone who plays like a Japanese keyboard or anything like that, there's always a load of sounds that you haven't got a clue what they are. Like Cocteau and stuff like that. You get to mic up a Cocteau and stuff. And it's just really interesting. And I got to do a lot of African bands and jazz bands, and they had very much, it was like a multicultural thing the council did, and they did loads of different types of music, which was brilliant, and it was free. So people went along, Sunday afternoon in the park for 2 or 3 hours, set up a little stage, nothing flashed, just in a big marquee, and it was great doing things like that. And I also did things like I worked on Nice Jazz Festival for a couple of years, and that was amazing because I was actually doing monitors that time, so I was the monitor engineer, and I was there for, it was like running for 7 or 8 days. So I was there for almost 2 weeks, doing some of the biggest names in jazz. So I got to do people like Count Basie Orchestra, B.B. King, Etta James, and just Lionel Hampton, and people that now, like, I look back to how I was then. I was like, I was this cocky sort of 20-something,
Just
doing
not bothered about.
not bothered about it. I mean, but then you get someone like B.B. King come in, and you'd like just go, no, this guy is just, he really is good.
Yeah.
And Count Basie Orchestra is probably the thing out of any musical thing I've ever seen that's stunned me more than anything, because you've got all these old guys turning up, and they start playing, and they're just so bob on, and just, you know, an amazing drummer, and just but the section playing.
Yeah.
Because I'd seen a couple of big bands. Obviously, I'd worked with a couple of big bands. Yeah. And I remember we had a French big band like a few days before. Then these old guys turn up, and it's just amazing. Frank Richards, just obviously Count Basie. I'm not that old. Count Basie was actually dead by then. But the orchestra was still a lot of the original players, and you just kind of, I still haven't heard anything that type before. And I did a lot of monitor engineering, being a monitor engineer rather than front of house engineer when I started.
Is that incidentally, how things sort of start?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of my first breaks was as a monitor engineer. Yeah. My first sort of big tour that I got independently of Tiger High was as a monitor engineer, which was Katrina and the Waves.
Katrina and the Waves?
Yes, one of the...
Walking on Sunshine?
Walking on Sunshine. Which is great. I mean, it was the first tour that took me to America, took me around Europe, took me around Britain, and kind of that was the first one I got off my own back as, you know, we want him to do the tour. And it just spiraled on from there, really. It's all pretty much word of mouth. Yeah. Everything you get is someone recommends you, someone remembers that you did a good job. Yes. It's pretty much, he didn't mess up, he got away with it, he was okay. Yeah. He was quite reasonable to work with. Yes. And a lot of it goes on that, you know. If you can get through the job without screwing up, without upsetting anyone, and doing a reasonable job, then you'll get another job. You know, it's pretty much goes on like that. And you know, I'm in a position now where I employ or recommend other people. Yeah. And it's pretty much, he's a hard worker. Yes. He listens. He's not going to upset anyone, and he's going to go do a good job.
I mean, there's a serious hard work ethic in your line of business. What you're doing.
It's long hours.
Yeah.
It's getting harder for me, but because I'm not a spring chicken anymore. Yeah. But I still love it. I don't complain.
I think
Well, I do complain, but not not as much as I could.
I mean, I was just looking at this list of like people that you work with. So it's Radiohead, Suede, Suede.Echobelly, Boo Radleys, Sleeper, Pulp, Cocteau Twins, Teenage Fanclub, Sneaker Pimps, Finley Quaye, Nadir Davenport, Bryan Ferry, Lisa Stansfield, Bjork, Lighthouse Family, Gay Dad, Morcheeba, Elastica, Stereo MCs, Dandy Warhols, Katrina in the Raves, Gene, The Damned, Mika.
Yes, so you had to get Mika in there, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
Bless his little cotton socks.
What was that like?
I got a phone call from the guitarist Martin, phoned me up and said, I'm doing this lad called Mika. Yeah. I think it's going to do really well, and would you fancy coming down and doing a show? Mm. So I went down, and it was before anything had come out. They were just prepping him for the first single, which is Grace Kelly. And I heard Grace Kelly, and it still is a top tune. Yeah. And Mika has got a lot of talent, and he can sing, and he can put on a show. And it's quite interesting being involved right from the very beginning, from nobody has heard of you whatsoever, to it's beginning to bubble under, to #1 single. Yeah. And it was quite good fun I did it for a year. Yeah. The stress was incredible because we were doing lots and lots of shows, lots of press, not much money, lots of no sleep, fly to America, fly home 4 days later, do a couple of days in Europe, fly back to America, fly to Australia. It was quite hard work, and the management ethos wasn't particularly to my liking. Let's leave it at that. Yeah. But I mean, I did a year with him. Yeah.
When did you start working with Prodigy?
I started working with Prodigy about 8.5 years ago. Yeah. It was John during the Always Outnumbered, Never Outgunned tour. Yep. I'd actually met the tour manager, when he did his first ever tour, which was actually Katrina and the Waves, when he was working for the support act, which is a lad called Andy Paulak from Newcastle. And he was Andy's best mate.
Yeah.
And he'd come along as guitar tech.
Yeah.
Except he was fairly clueless. And Jon, even now, will admit he's probably one of the most technically useless people. You'd never let him, I mean, you wouldn't let him fix anything. And he was setting all the band's gear up, and we basically took him under our, come on, Jon, we'll help you, don't worry. And we remained good mates ever since then. And I kind of, when he started tour managing, he started doing raves up in Newcastle, then ended up tour managing the Prodigy from basically the beginning. We saw each other again on Lollapalooza when I was out with Tricky, and Prodigy came out. And then I didn't see him again for quite a few years. And then I got a call to do some gigs with Keith Flint on a solo project, and went out and did a couple of shows with Keith. Yeah. And then when the Prodigy gig came up, I was on a short list of 2 people, and didn't get it. The other Ian Nelson, who was Placebo's engineer, ended up doing it. But he did it for a couple of weeks and decided that he'd rather go back to Placebo. He didn't particularly enjoy it because it's one of those gigs that you kind of have to want to do it. Yeah. And you have to kind of understand. It just doesn't suit some people. Okay. It's very loud, and it's very bright and flashy, and it's very loud on stage. And if you can't get to grips with that, it's really hard. Yeah. So I kind of got a second shot at it a couple of weeks in. So I took over kind of halfway through the British tour. Yeah. And then haven't really looked back. But I love reggae music, and I've always loved bass. Yes. And that's the important thing. I love bass. I have no fear of bass.
Mate. Music to my ears.
And some people don't like bass. Some people always like controlling. And I'm like, you can never have too much bass. It's actually physically impossible. And so when I come up to Prodigy, it's just like, it's great. And I'm allowed to experiment as well. They've actually let me do things like, we built a bass cannon in a truck in Northallerton, in a farm near Northallerton, to see if we were trying to build a bass exterminating machine to take to festivals.
Bass exterminating?
Yeah, we wanted to see if we could knock things over with bass, really, as an effect. I mean, it kind of worked, but kind of didn't. We almost killed the truck driver because he was asleep in his cab, and we kind of warned him we were going to make a lot of noise, and he was just, I'll be all right. And then we started firing off these bass notes, and we got complaints from 3 miles away, though.
Really? Oh, yes. So his internal organs were starting to boil then?
Yeah, I think pretty much so. But, I kind of do a lot of experiments with bass, trying to make it... I don't want to be the loudest engineer in the world, but I'd like to be the most powerful. Yeah. Which is 2 very different things, I think. Because you can be loud, but unless you've got dynamics, it doesn't mean anything. And I'd like people to go... The greatest compliment I get is the sound was powerful. Yes. It's not the sound was the loudest thing, because it's not that difficult to make people think it's loud. Yeah. To make it sound powerful is the greatest compliment I can get. Yes. For a band like the Prodigy.
No, it's experiential, the gig, isn't it?
Experiential?
Yeah. That's a word.
Not really, but I think it will do.
You know what I mean, though? It's
belting loud, that's what it is.
It's the whole...
It's the whole experience of thunderous bass, but not all the time. I don't like it. I wouldn't like to think that it was you were hammered from the time. That you could have light and shade. But when the bass drops in, the bass has got to drop.
Oh, God, it does. Advice for people wanting to get into this industry.
Yeah. I'm actually trying to do an article about it at the moment. So it's something I've been thinking about a lot, and I just sent out some questions and trying to how much has changed since I started. And to be honest, a lot of things have, but essentially nothing has. Nowadays, when I started, there was one BBC were the only people you could do anything to do with training to do sound. Nowadays, there's how many media courses where you can become a sound engineer, you can become a DJ, you become anything. You can go to any college in the country and do a course that is vaguely related to sound. So there's loads of them, and I meet loads and loads of students who've got a degree in sound something. Yeah. How many of them are going to get a job in an industry? very few. And you still got to have that innate talent. And a lot of the people that I meet, some of them have come up through the academic route, but just as many have been on a different degree, but end up working at gigs, working for bands, and going in this pretty much the same route I did, of just hanging around, making themselves useful. And it's the people who hang around, make themselves useful, work for nothing, show they're going to work hard, and then show an innate ability. They're the ones who tend to succeed. So unfortunately, I don't think anything much has changed since I first started. I think hanging around and working for nothing.
I love that.
I got £2 a day, I think, for my first tour. And even in those old ancient days, that wasn't a lot of money.
That beats Tim's one, £10 a gig, to think you're £2 a day.
£2 a day.
£2 a day. Yeah. So, well, I think we'll wrap it up there. We've covered a lot of ground there, and it's been massively interesting talking to you. And I hope people that are watching this will be inspired by you.
Yeah, I think the thing is, if you love doing it, then just keep doing it until you succeed, really. It took me years, you know, it was a long time of struggling away before I actually got my first big tour. And before I've been doing it for, this October will be 30 years since I did my first tour.
30 years, I mean, that's a career.
And I still enjoy it, and I still look forward to work every day. And there's not many people I know who still look forward to work every day.
No.
But you've got to love doing it, unfortunately. Or fortunately. That's it.
Jon, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.